Good morning. This is Djamila le Pair from the Netherlands. My guest today is Terry Kraettli. We're going to do, or not we, but this is in a series of podcasts about homeschooling. And my first guest is Terry Kraettli. Terry and I met in Switzerland way back when our children were small. And Terry Kraettli is the reason I started homeschooling because she taught me about it. I didn't know it existed. She inspired me. And at the time, it was the best thing for my children. So I thought she'd be the first guest in our series. And so I welcome Terry. Please, can you introduce yourself so that I don't say things about you that you might not want me to say about you? Not that I know anything, but when I met you, you were not teaching anymore, although you were teaching at the WAC, our international club that we were both member of, and you were married. You are still married to a pilot, but I let the rest be up to you.
Right. Oh, well, Djamila, that brings back some very special and very precious memories indeed. I was just talking to Jonathan and Alicia, our children, just about this opportunity that has arisen, and they remember you very clearly, and of course, your children too. So first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity of coming on your podcast and sharing some of the things that we've experienced through our journey of homeschooling. Yes, I have a background in teaching, and of course that was a huge help in terms of getting accreditation from the government in Switzerland. But I was, just a little bit about myself perhaps, I was actually born in Rome from an Italian father and a British mother, and had the great blessing of actually being brought up bilingual. And I think perhaps that gave me an advantage in terms of navigating two different cultures, and having the opportunity to be brought up with a really open mind and being flexible and not stagnant in one or another way of thinking. About 20 years ago, we moved to New Zealand, where we are still currently living. It was a decision we don't regret, although we, of course, miss being in touch with people like you, Djamila. It's been, of course, wonderful to be reconnected through this opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking to involve the children, but then it would get very big and complicated. Maybe that's for next phase. That would be interesting. For my children, I can say that they don't remember a whole lot. You know, often because they were so small. When I say, remember when we did this, when we, you know, all these workshops, and half of them they don't remember. But I guess it's the all impression that they have very happy memories of. So we met in Switzerland, and I remember the reason I was thinking, I was worried about my son going to kindergarten, not because I'm against kindergarten. I mean, that was a logical thing, and I didn't know homeschooling existed. It never crossed my mind. But I was worried because my son at the time, he was highly energetic and highly sensitive. And I just thought, not only wouldn't he flourish in a kindergarten, but he would also, it might, you know, be damaging, or he couldn't cope. And so I was worried because at the time he was 4, and I was thinking, well, back in Holland, he would have gone to kindergarten now. In Switzerland, it was a year later. You could go to kindergarten at 5. It wasn't obligatory. Children go to school in Switzerland at 7, to the elementary school. And I was thinking, what am I going to do? Am I going to send, or I was a bit worried. And then I met you, and you said you were homeschooling. And I thought, what is it? And you were very kind, because you showed me all your material, and you showed me, you told me, we had many conversations. You told me how you did it. And your children were so happy and open and outgoing, trying all different things. And so that was a real selling ticket for me to, you know, your family, the positiveness and the adventurousness of it all. So then when my son turned 5, I decided I'll do an experimental year. and I'll try this because I don't know. I felt really insecure. I didn't know what to do. How does one teach? I am not a teacher, so I didn't have the knowledge that you had. But I just thought we'll do an experimental year because it's not obligatory for him yet to go to school, and then we can see how it is. And it was just a fabulous year, and we never stopped until, of course, high school. So that's how we met. And and I send you a list of questions which we'll cover. But what was for you, being a teacher, the reason for homeschooling your own children?
Look, I think there's a wide range of reasons, but I think you can possibly pin them down to possibly two. Because of my teaching background, of course, moving to Switzerland, I thoroughly researched what the education system would produce. What kind of graduates, what kind of human beings would these children grow up to be and to learn. And I felt that it was lacking in a way that it provoked them to think outside the box and to challenge concepts that were just being fed to them. I wanted them to grow up being open-minded and not being afraid to challenge the status quo. And it's very difficult to do in an environment where it's quite constricted. This is how you do things, and there's no real reason for why things are done the way that they're done. It's just the system. Yeah. And of course, we wanted them to grow up with values, moral values as well. We are Bible believing Christians, and of course, for us, it was important not only that they grow up learning about a spiritual dimension of life, but that they would grow up with those values that we really cherished. So, for example, inclusion and understanding of others and the care of not just ourselves, but being altruistic and being caring and sharing. And so we felt really strongly that having an input in their lives at a young age would give them an opportunity to grow considering these values to be the values that they would adopt in adulthood. Yeah. And I have to say, I'm really pleased to see that they both, are very balanced young people.
Yeah. And did you homeschool all the way to the end of high school, or to high school, or when did they ever go to school?
So yes, they did actually. So our children started. So Jonathan started homeschooling when he was 3. Which is a very, very young age, but his curiosity was what drove us. Basically, it was a response to a need that he really voiced, and he kept saying to me, he was angry because he could see signposts and he wanted to know what it said, and so that eagerness for him to learn really instigated me to start looking. And so at the age of 3, actually, we started homeschooling. And when we moved to New Zealand, just because of the circumstances, unfortunately, when he was 8, they started going to school.
And the material you used, you showed me the material, but you got it from America or or England? Or did you make it yourself?
It was a British, yes and no. So it's an English, quite well-established system, or at least we got it from the UK. But I'm just thinking now, possibly you're right, it probably originates from the US. And can I say the name, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So it was ABC with Ace and Christy.
Oh, right.
That's cool. Yeah. And so that actually does. It's a curriculum that actually takes you right up to the end of high school. What we liked about it was that the pace at which the children can progress is very self-directed. And we liked that about it, but it's also very structured. So you have a sense of progress, you have a sense of accomplishment, and yeah.
And how did you homeschool? I mean, I'm asking this because I later on in England met a teacher who was extremely frustrated. She was a maths teacher, I think, even at Eton. And she had 3 boys or something, and she had at one point then decided to homeschool her own children. And she was really frustrated because she said, I'm doing exactly the same as I'm doing in class, and it doesn't work. You know, my children don't listen, they don't do. And we all laughed because, you know, we said, let it go. You're not in front of a class, you're not group managing people. But how was that for you? Did you classically teach them, or did you sit next to them, or?
So we had, I think that my teaching background definitely helped an awful lot in terms of creating a structure, and just observing the way that Jonathan learned was really something that actually taught me a lot about even more about children and the way that they learn. So that was really important, an important journey for me as well, to see and to respond to his way of learning. And for him, it was really important to have a structure. And so we actually flew to the UK to buy some uniforms. And so that's how structured it was. And in his mind, it didn't matter whether we were playing or whether we were having morning tea. The reality was that until the uniform was being worn, it was still school day. And then when that came off, it was, you know, completely free. And I liked the fact that, and it worked for Jonathan and for Alicia, that they knew this was, you know, it wasn't just a matter of the time, of course, that they eventually learned to tell time, but it was quite symbolic for them to get up in the morning, have a routine, put the uniform on, and so the day would go. Yeah. And it didn't matter whether I was home or not, that would continue regardless. So my husband and Marcus and I were in that instance, completely interchangeable. If I wasn't there, he would pick up. But the children knew the structure, and they just, you know, and it gave them stability, I think. And gave us stability as well, actually. So the phone would come off the hook. We would never answer the phone, and it was a time dedicated to them and to learning and to having fun as well. There was a lot of fun involved.
Yeah, I think maybe for Dutch viewers to clarify, in the English school system, all the public schools, well, I say public, it's state schools, they have uniforms. And so it is a very natural thing for all the school children to wear them. I never did because I wasn't grown up with it. And to me personally, it seemed like they were little grown-ups, and that I didn't want my children to be grown, you know, I want them to be children as long as possible. So, but just to clarify that is a normal way of dressing in the British school system. So Marcus, your husband, he was involved almost equally, you would say, but he...
Probably not as much, but he was involved. You know, if I was engaged otherwise, or if I was away, if I was in the UK visiting family or traveling, or then he was able to just step in and carry on where we'd left off the previous day. Yeah. And it was something that I felt really was very important, actually, for us to be on this journey together, to see, you know, to see the penny drop in a child's life is just so exciting, and you know, for you to have given that penny and for it to drop in their mind is just something that I wouldn't have wanted to keep for myself only. Yeah.
And did he from the beginning agree with homeschooling?
No, he didn't actually. It was a journey. It was really a journey for him. For me, it was quite clear. As the more I investigated, the clearer it became that was what I wanted for our children, or for Jonathan at that point. Alicia was really tiny. But you know, it was, and I didn't feel also that it was something that I wanted to force on him. It's very much, I felt, was a family decision. and he came round eventually, just through some conversations and sharing, my ideas of how I was going to implement it, and how it would open the minds of the children and give us opportunity to do things together that we would otherwise not have. And I remember, just the smallest, not really the smallest of things, but I always used to think, why should I leave somebody else to give my children life skills? Why should I give somebody else the joy of doing that? It's something that will be with them forever. And I want to be the one to share that with them, and see them acquire those skills and those abilities.
Yeah. And what did you find? I mean, it's a relatively short time, 5 years you homeschooled, more or less. What did you find difficult, or what were things you hadn't expected to be problematic, or?
I think there was probably a tendency to think, because Jonathan did it this way, Alicia will do it this way as well. And I think as a parent, it's quite easy to see that they're very different, but you're doing the same thing, so one should react the same way as the other. And I think it took a moment or two to say, actually, no, they have two very different ways of learning, and that needs to be respected, So it took me a little bit to kind of adjust my thinking and respond to that. And yeah, we've had, even as now that they're adults, we've had conversations about this in the past, about how they felt. And even though they were little, they have some very clear memories of that time.
Yeah. What was your own school upbringing like? Did you go to formal education? Did you mind it? Did you like it? No, I didn't. Probably my parents coming from two very different cultures, and perhaps not being very, what's the word I want to look for? Maybe open to even considering a different option from, formal education as we know it. My mum would have been an absolute beautiful homeschooler. As a mum, she took every opportunities to make a learning experience out of life, out of everything. So I know that she would have been very good at it if she had thought about it. But no, so I didn't. I was not, and neither did my husband. Actually, Marcus was. We had quite some resistance actually in Switzerland from family and friends who didn't understand. Why are you doing this? The state should be sufficient. And that's exactly how I felt was not the case. Yeah. But now you're talking about the reactions of the people around you to you homeschooling, right? But I mean, when you went to school, did you go to a normal school? Did you, or were you homeschooled also, or were you educated in different ways than the norm, so to say, or?
I went to private schools, in part, and boarding schools, and in a part of my, at a certain time. So no, not homeschooled, and there was not even a consideration of that. I don't think there was even the knowledge of it, to be honest. But if I look back, and one of the reasons for which we homeschooled was because I felt the need to express opinions I was not free to express, because you're kind of put in this channel of thinking, and I didn't want that. Yeah. But no, I didn't have the opportunity to be.
But did you enjoy school as a child?
Did I enjoy school as a child? Probably perhaps not all of it. And again, I think for me was really important to learn about myself, how I was learning, what kind of a learner I was. And when I understood that, then school became a really fun place to be. But that was on a journey that I was on my own. It wasn't something that I was encouraged to investigate. So no, I didn't enjoy it for a period of time until then I realized, this is how I learn, right, okay, now I'm going to go on this. And then it was fun, and then it was great. Yeah.
And Marcus, I assume he went through the Swiss school system.
He went for a period of time. He was living in Italy, and so he went through the Italian system until he was 16, and then went to Switzerland and was put through the the Swiss. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And do your children how do they look back on that period that they were homeschooled?
They loved it. They really, really loved it. We have some very vivid memories of learning things together and making games, of the learning experience. And one of the things that the program we chose allowed to do was to be quite creative. And so you were talking about twiling being quite physical, and we had some exercises where to learn the alphabet backwards, or just random. I was jumping on letters that I'd put on the floor, and so it was all very much fun, and it was interactive, and also I think the ability to dwell perhaps on subject or on topics that the children were really fascinated by. So that pace of learning was really, and they loved that, that we could dwell on something for longer, or move faster if it was something that they were not so particularly interested in. And they really, really thrived on that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What did you do for social interaction and sports, for example, during that period?
So, well, we met at the WAC, which was the Women Activity Club, and that was a place for women. We were all expats, really. And so when I found the WAC, it was, it was an answer to prayer, to be honest with you, because I was desperate to find a group of women who were like-minded and wanted their children, to be interacting with children of different cultures and different backgrounds, and have opportunities to learn in a different way. Yeah. And so that was one of the things that they did. And of course, through the WAC, which was the Women Activity Club, Alicia did ballet, and both Jonathan and Alicia did music outside of it was, we booked classes for that. And swimming was something that they were really very, very involved in.
It might be good maybe to say a little bit about the WAC for the Dutch viewers, because in Holland a lot of people are now contemplating to maybe together start a school, especially because of Corona. They don't want their children to go through the masks and the fear culture. So a lot of people are contemplating to start schools or start homeschooling, but homeschooling is quite difficult in Holland. The only way you can easy do it is if your child has never been to school and you have ideological or other objections to it. But of course, a lot of children have gone to school and now find that is not a happy situation. So the WAC, it was also a school in a way, but it was started by one American woman, I think. Her husband had a business, business in Switzerland, and he gave, a space to these women, and they started organizing play groups, after school groups, but also session or like social events for parents, for couple, for the whole family. So it was really a whole family sort of club. And it was just done by, first a couple of Americans coming together, and then it became international. And it was just run by volunteers. There were membership fees, and we did so much from that money. So that is an inspiration as well. I found it very inspiring. Yes. So that's where we met, and that's where my children went to play groups, and your children were a little bit older, so we met in the social events and in the playground. And sports, how did your children, did they do any, I mean, children do sports all the time, obviously, because they're always moving, but did you organize anything in that area?
So we, for me, it was really important that they learn to swim. So actually we went swimming, so they attended classes, but we also went swimming just as a pastime. And I was very much aware of finding there's a fine balance between rushing from one activity to another and not having the time to just take stock of what's going on around you. So I was very much aware of that balance in their lives. And while we wanted them very much to be involved, we were also, it wasn't a competition for us to tick boxes and to have a list of things that we could say, my child does this and this and this and this. But yeah, so skiing, of course, and as in Switzerland, it's almost a must. And we did ice skating and swimming, and Alicia did ballet and music.
When I homeschool, I also got a lot of resistance from my surroundings, because in Holland it's practically non-existent. And a lot of people came to me like, but what about the social side? What about the social side? Now, of course, we had the WAC, but I found, I was quite amazed. I didn't know this before I had children, but I found that young children, they didn't need a lot of social interaction. I mean, they played with children, but it was, to me, more they played next to children more than with children. So and of course, from time to time, they played outside with the neighbors and they would do together, but it wasn't to the amount that I initially thought or that people are worried about. It was only, say, towards when they got 9 that I really noticed now there's a real social need. But I just don't know if you recognize that from the period that you educated your children.
I think I completely agree with you, actually. And I think adults presume they know what children need. But actually, again, I think the word that comes to mind is balance. And one of the things that we taught our children to do was to be content in their own company. And to be happy to meet others and to interact competently and be sociable and be friendly and be comfortable also interacting with others, but also comfortable in their own company and without having to be stimulated by others. And that was really important to us as well, to be independent from other people's offerings, if you like. And as you said, we also found that, especially when they're much younger, they're playing alongside others. They're not really playing with others. We felt that the WAC gave us a really nice that balance of interacting. We had often we were hosting friends. I don't feel that they ever were disadvantaged socially speaking because of being homeschooled. In fact, quite the opposite, actually.
Yeah. And were you a member of a homeschool group?
No, and it was very difficult in those days in Switzerland. And we had the council come and visit, because when Jonathan turned 5, I think it was, and they were like, okay, it's time to come to the kindergarten. And I said, no, we're not going. And so the council called and they came to visit and wanted to see my teacher accreditation. And even though I was not educated in Switzerland and not accredited as a licensed teacher there, but it was still recognized and we were allowed to do it. So yeah, it was.
Yeah, I did find the Swiss very supportive. They didn't want you to homeschool, preferably, but I did find that I also had 1 or 2 visits, but they were very supportive. You know, they wanted, if you needed material, they would give material, and they had advice, and I was quite pleasantly surprised at the support.
Yeah. So no, there was no, at that time I was not aware of anybody else doing it. So no.
Because later on there were after you left, I discovered homeschool groups, and they were all connected through Switzerland. So I was just wondering, because I couldn't remember, I don't remember you being part of that group, but no.
No, I wasn't. Yeah.
No. How did they react to going to school when they finally did go to school?
Well, it was the most interesting experience ever, because I was really I was devastated, actually, when I was really I cried a bucket, literally, when we had to make the decision that they had to go to school. So and I remember we made an appointment to see the principal of the school, which was a very unusual thing to do before a parent. You just go to school, you start school, that's it. No parent makes an appointment with the principal. But no, I wanted to see the principal and understand. And after we left, the principal came up to us and said that after we had left the meeting, he went to the teachers and said, "We have, brace yourself, we've got 2 children that are coming from a homeschooling background." And he said, he shook hands with us, and he said, I had to eat my words. He said, "Your children are so balanced." And within the first few weeks of school, they were bumped up a whole class year level. And I think that was evidence, really, that what we were doing was working, and they were progressing at their own speed, which was above the year level that they were.
Did they find it difficult, or did they?
No,
I
they
mean
didn't
the social side.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, both of them were very well prepared, very well balanced. I think perhaps it was not so much perhaps it was a rude awakening to see that not everybody does the same things, and not everybody is as considerate as perhaps we are, or not as kind. But that was also part of life and part of growing up, I suppose. Yeah. But no, in terms of integrating, in terms of participation and contribution to their classroom environment, they really didn't struggle. They made friends.
Yeah. And so what did they go on to do? They're now in their late 20s, I think, or?
Yes, Jonathan is 27, Alicia's 25. Alicia's a teacher.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
Yes, yeah. And I asked, actually, just not very long ago, whether she would, maybe not long ago, maybe about a year and a half ago, we had this conversation, and I asked her whether she would ever think about homeschooling her children, and she said, "Yeah, most certainly yes," which I thought was quite interesting. So she's a teacher, and Jonathan is a professional photographer. So he's went on to art school. And
apologies, I just get a question through that I can't read.
Yeah, that's all good.
Nico wants to ask a question.
I'm just looking at my battery, actually. I didn't realize I haven't connected my battery.
Okay, how long have we got?
Not much, not long,
okay.
Actually. Well, 24% remaining.
Yeah.
So
is there anything you would really want to say to homeschoolers or people wanting to start this, or anything we haven't covered that you think is very important to say to other people to help them?
Yeah, perhaps. I think it's such a personal journey, isn't it? And I don't think that there's any right or any wrong particular. I think it's every family finds their own way of doing it, and in response to the way that their children learn, or their own environment, or their own personal situation. Mm-hmm. But I would encourage parents to not be afraid of it, and to take a chance, because it is most satisfying when you hear your child reading something for the first time, and you know you have done that journey with them, and you've given them skills, whether they're social or whether they're academic skills, that they will really cherish and they will use their whole life. And to leave that joy to somebody who's an absolute complete stranger, I think it's something that you're cutting yourself short for, which is a shame. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm glad. So go ahead. No.
I think a lot of people are afraid of it, are afraid of the unknown. But actually, it is a journey you undertake with your own children, and you learn together. Yeah. And it's beautiful.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think it's important to say there is not one good way. And this series is not to say you should homeschool. It's just to give a palette of possibilities of within even the homeschool community. People have done it so differently as well, and it really is driven by the child. Some people take their children out of school because they're bullied, and then they start homeschooling. Or some people, like you said, they can't wait to learn formal learning, academic learning, and they go that way. There's so many reasons, and for some children it doesn't work. Like just a certain school system won't work for one person and another. So there is no right or wrong. It's just a way of doing things. I'm very glad I did it. As you say, it's a very intimate sort of being with your children, because you share so much and you learn so much through them. I learned things about learning, like you said, that I didn't know before. I mean, you know how you learn, but you don't know that there are other ways. And I remember my son, who was very energetic. He couldn't sit still, and I was still in my formal education mode, and I thought, well, if he does his lesson, he should sit still, until it dawned on me he can't do it unless he's jumping up and down. And I think those are treasures for me to learn from my children, like how people are, and that you shouldn't put them in a form, and this is the outcome. No. Yes, I hope that you still have battery left to say goodbye. Yes. That we.
Yes.
Yeah.
23%.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Terry, for this conversation. We will catch up privately at some other point, because we have a lot more things to talk about. But thank you very much for opening this series. And let's hope we get a lot more mothers wanting to contribute, and then give this palette to other doubting, fearful parents. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. It's been an absolute wonderful opportunity, for which I really thank you. It's taken me down memory lanes that I had, put very much at the back of my mind. But all those memories are absolutely memories I cherish, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Het gaat hier vandaag over saamhorigheid.
Dagje zonder hemel. Dus de liegt niet. Wat normaal maken is wat niet normaal.
Every nation in every region now has a decision to make.
En dan ook geen hel meer.
You think I'm joking? Predator drones.
Dat is best makkelijk.
You will never see it coming.
Wat dacht je alle mensen?
Laat staan dat ik kan ingaan over vuur.
Bezig met vandaag.